What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ink Drink Think, episode 8. This episode, grab your shovels. I said it before. We're grave digging tonight. Get into the spooky Halloween spirit with some horror movie characters. I'm your host, Michael Pickard, joined always by my wonderfully talented co-hosts and friends, Johnny Wise. Johnny, you are up, my friend.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Johnny, and as I said in the last episode, I am drawing The Exorcist. I've read it a couple times, have never seen it, so I'm kind of just been piecing together this drawing from snippets I've seen of the film and my memories of the book. Very spooky book, as I remember. And I'm pretty much nearly all the way through the inks on this. So I think I'm going to start coloring it pretty soon into this episode. Probably do a lot of green on this one. Green is always good for spooky things.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah, excited to get into it. Excited to dive right in.
Great, man. Well, without further delay, we'll introduce our fellow co-host, Nate Wells. Nate, you have the floor.
Hey, what's up, guys? Nate Wells. I am still drawing my gothic classic horror Freddy Krueger. I said in the first part, I couldn't decide if I wanted to do something a little more classic or something newer, a little more fun. And I thought, I don't have to decide. I can just put these two things together and have a lot of fun with it. And I am. I got through a lot of the inks on Freddy last time. He's pretty much just wearing this big black cloak. So he's a lot of just like, I'm just going to lay some black ink down and see what happens. So far, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to get into the inks on who I'm imagining to be Nancy from the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and also in a gothic setting here. I didn't want to draw Heather Langenkamp, and so she's turned away from the camera. But yeah, I'm going to draw her little gown here and get into some of the backgrounds. I've kind of like a little gothic entryway done here. But yeah, I'm excited to see if this works. Hopefully it does. I plan on kind of like painting over this digitally to try and make a poster out of it, but I still want it to work in black and white. So hopefully we get there. If not, I'll just fix it all digitally and you'll see that later on Instagram. But I'm drinking a little Bud Light out of my Superman Powerful Pickup Lines pint glass here.
Hit us up with one. Hit us up.
Yeah.
I'll give you guys another one. Let's see what's a good one. I may be more powerful than a locomotive, but only you can stop me in my tracks.
Wow.
That's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one.
Awesome. Yeah.
And remember, everybody, you can find Nate's Tinder profile linked below.
You can. That's my only social media is Tinder.
And without further delay, guys, before his iPad dies on us, teacher Todd himself, Todd Blackwood.
So I'm working on I can't keep my battery going. But I got I'm doing Salem's Lot apparently. So I've done many versions. So this is the black and white.
Damn.
I realized at the last second I forgot his teeth and his eyes. So but I've got then this version. And then I've got, so those are like my more graphic versions, and then I've got this version going on. And there's a big fire at the end of the novel, so I actually think that making it look like things are on fire and background is actually appropriate, but sort of a mystical fire of some kind. So I had a lot of fun with doing this logo, and trying to get. I was surprised. I had to Google it, but apparently his eyes were yellow. I thought for sure they're anything but that. So, yeah, he's fun to draw, and I just had a bunch of coffee, and I'm leaving it at that.
God, that's looking good, dude.
Yeah, it's explosive. Great. It's energetic. Yeah. It's everything we expect from you, Todd.
Nice. Well, I do love drawing me some horror. Yeah.
Well, I won't delay you any further. I'll hop into mine real quick. I'm Michael Pickard, guys, as I said. Here is my piece for this week. I'm doing The Thing, John Carpenter's version. I have MacReady, as played by Russell Crowe, up here on the top. And like a playing card, you can flip this one and find the monster, the titular Thing, morphing as it does throughout the film.
Did you say Russell Crowe?
Oh my God, did I say Russell Crowe? You know I've had a couple of drinks when I mistake Kurt Russell for Russell Crowe. But, you know.
Good catch.
You're
Good
close,
catch.
yeah. People would be going back and going, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Yeah, Russell Crowe would actually kill that role.
Russell Crowe.
He said that, and I was like, sure. Yeah, Russell Crowe, definitely.
Yeah, we all
think so. Yeah.
Thank God Teacher Todd is caffeinated because I wouldn't have kept up with that. But anyways, guys, yeah.
Stay sober this time.
Yeah. I'm just strapping up the line work right now, and if I can, I'm going to get to some brush work. But if not the end of the world. I'll be pretty content with where I got to with this drawing for today. But anyways, guys, we can get into the drawing. We can get into the conversations about horror. And this is kind of a fun prompt I'll pitch to you guys right now. We were talking a little bit off camera about the significance of vampires and their iconography, and how over the years they've represented a ton of different fears of the populace, whether it's anti-Semitism or homophobia. And in the same regard, werewolves have very strong themes about masculinity and aggression, primal instincts. But this is where I'm going to throw it out as a question to you guys. Pick a generic horror trope, if you can, and what would your spin be on it to give it some kind of context or meaning? So for me, the one that came to my mind was The Mummy. And it would be really interesting to take a mummy and use it in a story about accepting one's age and one's finality. And maybe it's a midlife crisis story where a character is dealing with the fact that there's a mummy running around that's stealing people's youth. And he kind of has to come to terms himself with the fact that he's a middle-aged man, and that rather than dwell on the fact that his youth is fading, he should embrace what he has right now and live in the moment and be gracious for what he's lived through and excited for what he has to come in his way. But that's just my pitch. And I can give you guys a second if you need to. We can always cut as needed. But
Yeah, I feel like anything I would come up with has probably been done before. Because there's so much of that subtext already in a lot of these like creature features. You know, the werewolf is kind of a way to illustrate adolescence and a teen wolf and all that fun stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Damn, I don't know, man. I'm not a writer.
You're not?
Well,
I think
intelligent things.
I think I was actually thinking about this, and then I realized that it actually had been done. But The Shape of Water kind of illustrates an idea that I was about to play with, which was Creature from the Black Lagoon as a coming out story. But I think that film captures somebody's romantic awakening, if you will, through the vein of finding someone who's also alienated and very different from the norm.
Right.
Yeah, that is a good one. Damn. Yeah, every time I think about it and I'm like, no, you just can't do it. You bring up an example of it being done.
It makes me hopeful that Blumhouse now has the direction for the Universal Monster character universe after the Tom Cruise flopped Mummy, because I I would really love to see some of those projects come to fruition. I know that
Yeah.
Javier Bardem was supposed to play Frankenstein's monster, and Angelina Jolie was supposed to be Bride of Frankenstein when all of that was cast. And I think that's brilliant. Like, I would love to see a film about those two.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
But I don't know if we'll ever get it now. But I do have hopes that after The Invisible Man, which was originally supposed to be starring Johnny Depp, that
Interesting.
we'll get some exciting reimaginings for the modern age of those classic horror villains. Or
Yeah.
monsters, if you will, not necessarily a villain.
Well, it depends on what your goal is for a horror. You know, he- here's the reason why horror and comedy are my two favorite genres is because they're pretty easy to judge. It's either funny and it's either scary or it's not. And
Yeah.
I do think that horror can be really deep. Same thing with comedy, but at the same time, like if it's not scary, it's not working. Or if it's not fun, I feel like stand-up comedy in particular, comedy, it's like there's a stand-up comics get on stage and like test their jokes with an audience, and it doesn't, in a sense, it doesn't matter how clever you are if you don't get that visceral. People don't sit and listen to your jokes and are like, "That's really funny." You don't want that. You want them to
Mhm.
react in a very immediate. They can't help but laugh. That's
Yeah.
that thing that people go for, and I feel like horror is similar to that, or you know, and I think that really smart stuff can be scary in a metaphorical way or whatever, but like just sometimes stuff's just scary.
Mhm.
And to me, it's like you think it's important to think through why it's scary, but explaining it too much to the audience is something that can kill a horror story really fast.
Yeah.
Um, for I find the fact that Stephen King hates the Kubrick version of The Shining so much really speaks volumes to me because it tells me in a sense he kind of doesn't get it. Um, Kubrick, because Kubrick, the have you guys read The Shining, the
Yeah.
novel?
No.
Yeah.
No.
There's a bunch of stuff that
Whoops.
happens in the Kubrick movie that makes zero sense, but if you've read the novel, you understand what you're looking at. But
Hmm.
Kubrick was like, I'm not going to tell the audience any of this stuff, and I'm just going to let them wonder what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
But Stephen King, that really bothered Stephen King apparently for some reason. But I like that you figured all out, but you let the mystery work its magic for the audience.
Mm.
It's hard to say what vampires are interesting because they're kind of like Batman and that they can mean so many different things. They can be scary, they can be romantic scary, they can be a metaphor for adolescence, or there's so many different ways you can take a vampire and they're all valid.
Yeah,
you
they're
know
vampires are typically kind of the sexy monster, right? Like
can be,
Oh,
not
you know
always,
it.
but yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like they're always kind of the that's always the sexual story. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
Dracula is a very like romantic,
Oh yeah.
sexy story, and that's like the vampire story.
Yeah.
But they can also be really just gross. Um,
Yeah.
you think about
Yeah. I
like
Well,
prefer
30
the
Days of
first
Night.
ones, I think.
I
Yeah.
was mentioning J.S. Le Fanu, who's one of my favorite horror writers of all time, who wrote Carnilla, which is the vampire novel that precedes Dracula. And one of the story is basically about a girl who I got to think now, but anyways, there's a strange girl who starts showing up in the middle of the night at the foot of her bed, and you start piecing together that it's a vampire, but like it's total homosexual stuff going on in it. It's pretty overt for its time. It was really racy. Um, what was. So there's the actual horror of it, I guess, not the gay part, but the that it's some sort of a supernatural creature that's not necessarily good. But at the same time, there's this like, forbidden attraction thing going on. It's really interesting. And yeah, like a werewolf's gonna eat you, so you're not gonna feel too sexual about that, I would assume.
You would think, Todd.
You never know. I don't know. Maybe we're all missing out, but well, I was gonna say, like, vampires you can interpret so many ways, but like, how many ways can you interpret Frankenstein that hasn't already been done? To me, Frankenstein's very rigid. It's not. It'd be hard to do a teenage version of Frankenstein set in the modern world. You could probably do it, but like, that's
would suck.
somehow sexy. I mean, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but it'd be hard to think about doing. But on the other hand, Frankenstein's based on a specific story that somebody wrote, whereas vampires are based on legends. So there's some sort of deep, resonating thing going on. It must be based on people that had like rabies and different kinds of stuff that they explained or that got passed down. Same with werewolves. Werewolves are super primal.
Yeah, I do like that aspect of the vampire. Kind of like you were just saying, like Frankenstein is a literary character. He was a creation of one author, whereas vampires and werewolves are based on urban myth, legend, mythology.
Or based on some sort of rooted in some sort of truth.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be, I mean, think of all the weird noises. I don't know how much time you guys have spent in the woods or outdoors, but every once in a while you just hear something. You're like, what the hell was that? And you never know what it was. I mean, there was some explanation, but imagine 200 years ago or more, you hear some noise and you never know what it is. So somebody says, oh, there's this thing called banshees. You're like, oh, I got it. It was a banshee. That's what I heard.
That's true. Yeah, that's a great point.
I would be like, oh, okay, understood.
Foxes are one for that. Foxes sound bizarre.
Oh, yeah.
Have you guys heard, like,
don't they?
Foxes like having sex is terrifying.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, they don't sound like dogs at all.
No, they sound like babies being killed.
Yeah, they do. No, that's true. Yeah. I would kind of love to get a fox, but I know it would not be a good idea.
Yeah, I would like a fox.
I was actually just looking into that, not out of actual pursuit.
Getting a fox?
Yeah, no, just out of interest.
Yeah.
And apparently the woman who was being interviewed talking about her own pet bred foxes was that they are like giant cats. So they're not affectionate and they're just like endlessly like rambunctious and knocking things over.
Yeah. Yeah, they are really mischievous, I think. That's interesting that I've never heard that comparison before. Wow.
Well, I know for the past like 30 or 40 years, they've been trying to domesticate foxes. I know Russia had a big program devoted to it.
Really?
Yeah, actually.
Wow.
Would you guys be more terrified of a vampire or a werewolf then? Getting into that wildlife kind of conversation. If you're out in the middle of the woods and you come across a vampire or you come across a werewolf, which would you feel more fearful of?
Jesus. I think a werewolf. Because like I said before, the vampire probably just wants to sleep with me. And like,
oh, come on, Nate. Don't get ahead of yourself.
Dude, it probably just wants to like
those Superman quotes.
It just, dude, that's what I'm talking about. It just wants to suck on my neck a little bit, whereas like a vampire wants to eat me and feel really bad about it in the morning.
Yeah.
That's what it wants. So, because like a vampire, you could be like, oh, hey, wait, what do you want? And, it would say like in its little Eastern European accent that it wants to suck on my blood. And a werewolf, you can't talk to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't talk to that guy.
You're gonna, if it's a werewolf, you're gonna die. Where I guess if it's a vampire, it might make you another vampire.
Right.
I guess better than dying. I don't know.
Yeah, there could be some reasoning with a vampire. You can't really reason with a werewolf.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could at least like buy some time with a vampire. They seem pretty
Yeah.
cool. I watched True Blood on HBO. There's some pretty cool ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely vampire. I mean, either you're a little bit fucked, but werewolf. Have you guys seen American Werewolf in London?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love that.
That's-
Love that movie.
really good mix of funny and really horrifying.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah. Has anybody not seen it?
I haven't seen it
Yeah,
all the
I
way
mean-
through.
Wow. Yeah, you should see it.
I've seen the
Yeah,
opening
definitely.
where he gets bit, but I haven't watched the whole film. I haven't sat down and watched it.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Couldn't recommend.
I mean,
it
the
more
opening
highly.
was what I was mostly talking about
Yeah. But even
because
then,
that bit is
yeah.
like terrifying.
I'm sorry I called you a meatloaf, Jack. I mean, that's as much as I know what you're saying. That to what that transformation in that movie is just like that's one of the great cinematic moments ever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So
Yeah, for
crazy
sure.
how they pulled that off. My God. Yeah, I love that movie. I think
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
great.
real tragedy that they never made a sequel. I know Landis he had a sequel set up and the studio didn't like it, so they never did it. But they were going to do an American Werewolf in Paris.
Wait, they didn't? I thought that existed.
Well, they did, but it wasn't the one. He had a sequel he intended, and the sequel that came out was just something the studio crapped out.
Right.
But it was, an actual, the woman who was the guy's girlfriend was going to end up because it turned out she was going to be a werewolf.
Oh, right. Okay.
Had become a werewolf because of the previous events in the previous movie.
Right.
Um,
That would have been good.
yeah. I love that movie.
Are there any?
What about?
Oh, sorry, Johnny. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna do a little bit of a prompt myself. What about horror movie scores? You guys have any ones that you really like?
Ooh,
Oh yeah.
Jaws,
The Shining.
Yeah, The Shining.
The Shining.
Yeah.
The Shining. What's The Shining again?
Uh,
Someone do it.
Well, it's more noises, but there is music, but it's
Right. Yeah, it's just like a
that
high noise,
that
right?
opening sequence of them driving.
Yeah, the
is, like,
opening.
this
Oh my
Driving
God.
Yeah.
so creepy. The Thing has a great you wouldn't kind of The Thing is also
Oh,
one
yeah,
that
yeah,
Carpenter
yeah.
usually did music for his own movies, but that's who did the music for The Thing was
No,
Sergio
really?
Leone. Or
Really?
Oh, no
really?
Is
shit.
that right? Yeah, the guy who did The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh
Yeah,
my
that's
God.
amazing.
Really?
I'd never known that.
Yeah.
Because it feels really
Um,
carpentry, like they're just dun dun
Yeah,
dun
it
dun.
does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah, on that
does feel
same
really carpentry.
on that same note, Halloween. I love the music in
Oh,
Halloween.
absolutely.
Yeah, Halloween's great.
It's an
Yeah.
iconic element to the. Do you guys know that about what the original intention of Halloween was? Do you know that was supposed to be a one-off movie? That was like one of those sequels that was made that totally against his will.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the original premise for Halloween was that every year they're going to make a movie called Halloween that was going to come out on Halloween, but every year it was going to be a different story.
Oh, that would have been great.
Yeah, and that's where
and
like
so
the
this-
witch one comes in.
Yeah. And the studio was like, no, you have to make a sequel to this first one, and it has to be a continuation of the story. And John Carpenter was like, God damn it. Yeah. So they literally forced him into making a movie he didn't want to, but that would have been really interesting. I don't know though.
Yeah.
I kind of enjoy the even the really bad Michael Myers sequels.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's kind of where
Yeah,
like
for
those
sure.
slasher movies got kind of fun. I personally really enjoy Season of the Witch, but it's a really bad movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually got one of my favorite movie posters of all time, though. I think that
That's a
movie
good poster.
I was shocked how bad it was because the movie poster looks so cool. I was like,
Yeah, it is a
"This has
good
gotta be
poster.
scary." I watched it. I was like, "Wait, what?"
What are some major horror movie letdowns for you guys? What were some horror movies that you were really excited for that didn't follow
Babadook.
through?
I really wanted like Babadook.
Did you said Babadook?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't like it?
No.
Oh,
Well,
really?
I like-
I don't love it. I like it though. I like it actually quite a bit.
There's a string of movies, including the Babadook, where I really thought they were going to be good, and we talked about it last time, I think, or I know we talked about it. What was it? Insidious. Insidious
Oh,
was
yeah.
another one
Oh
that
yeah.
like the first half of the movie, I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing," and then it just took complete, and that's just my opinion. I think we might differ on some of this stuff, but
No, I think it really falls off at the end.
yeah, it turns into two different movies, but man, that the first half of Insidious scared the crap out of me, and same with Babadook. So that was why I was so happy with the movie The Witch and Hereditary, is because I think they were like, it didn't fall apart. And I remember thinking with The Witch, I was like, please don't fall apart. I'm really enjoying this. Please tell me this is as good as I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Nothing worse than a movie that seems like it's going to be good and then it falls apart. That payoff.
Yeah, for
is
sure.
like, oh,
Yeah, the ending
Yeah,
I think is really the best part or the most important part of a movie. Because if it leaves
absolutely.
you walking away talking about it or thinking about it, then it did its job, even if it was a slow burn or boring for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a couple modern examples, and me and Johnny kind of talked about it a little bit before we started the episode, was It Chapter 2. And it's a sequel, so I get like a lot of times sequels are just not going to be good. But yeah, I loved the first It from 2017 so much. I thought it was really, really good. And I love the cast for the second part. It's one of the most amazing casts. But that movie just didn't work.
Nate, that's interesting
Yeah.
because I was really
Yeah.
excited for the first chapter of It, the 2017 version. I was expecting it to scare my pants off. The trailers were haunting. I was so excited to go in and just be terrified for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
very sorely let down when I left and was not. Which, of course,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not to discredit the movie because I don't think it's bad by any means. Like, there's no critique of the film I would have. Like,
No, it's
effects
bad.
are.
Sorry, I had to say that.
Yeah, I just
I enjoy it. I enjoy the first one.
Yeah, for me,
Yeah,
I
like
didn't even bother with the second half because like I was so let down by the fact that I wasn't petrified by the first one because the marketing was so good. That first trailer is terrifying. That I was
Yeah.
I just can't bother. Like I couldn't get to it.
Yeah.
Well, I really like Bill Skarsgård, who plays Pennywise.
Yeah.
He was on a really
Yeah.
bad Netflix show called Hemlock Grove, which is like a really bad horror series. But I really liked him on the show. And so I was really glad that he was going to be in such a big role. And I thought he did an amazing job. There's not enough of him in the sequel because I think he was the best part.
Right.
I mean, you have to kind of go in. It is kind of like a fun episode of Stranger Things, like the first part. Not even just because like Finn Wolfhard is in it, but yeah, the sequel was a real letdown. Another one, and it's kind of a belated sequel, but Doctor Sleep is one I watched a couple months
I haven't
ago.
seen it yet either.
I was pretty disappointed in Doctor Sleep.
Yeah.
I thought it
it
was
was
a weird amalgamation of like the Stephen King book and wanting to do a sequel to Kubrick's The Shining.
Right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it kind of fell flat for me. I enjoyed it. It was a fun watch. There's a little bit too much like, I guess like action adventure in it for me.
Yeah.
kind of like we talked about before, I felt like there was kind of a competent protagonist, and so the
Right.
danger wasn't really there for me.
Yeah.
Not a bad film. It just didn't hit
Yeah.
like I wanted it to.
Right.
Hmm.
You probably had a lot of expectations.
Yeah. I love Ewan McGregor like a lot.
Yeah.
And you know,
Me
the
too.
trailers, you're like, oh my god, they're making a sequel to like The Shining, like the Kubrick movie.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and they steal some things visually from that movie, but it doesn't
Sure.
act like that movie at all because I mean Kubrick didn't make it, so it can't.
Right.
Yeah, a little bit of a letdown. Not a bad movie by any means, but definitely a letdown.
Yeah. I actually enjoyed that book. I thought Doctor Sleep, the book, was actually kind of good.
Yeah, I didn't read it either, but I've heard it's quite good.
I liked it. And I'm not, a Stephen King zombie. He doesn't always work for me, but I thought that book was really good.
Hmm.
So I was surprised. Yeah, I don't know. I think I thought that movie was going to be good, but right as I went in to see it, I remember thinking this movie's not going to be good.
Yeah.
What about
I don't know why.
what about like surprising horror movies, like ones that were actually good that you didn't expect to be at all?
Man.
One for me. Well, this is a tough one. I read quite a few years before it came out, or maybe like a year or so before it came out, before even the trailer was released. I read the premise of It Follows,
Oh yeah.
and I was like, that sounds interesting and silly, and I bet
Yeah.
it'll be pretty bad, but I want to watch it anyway. And then, fuck, that movie came out, and it's so
Really good.
That's a good movie. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen it yet.
I love
Oh, it's great.
It's really
what's her
good.
name? Micah Monroe. I think she's great.
Is she the lead in it?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, she's great. Really good. And that's another one where the soundtrack is incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. Do you not remember
I
it?
had no idea.
They're
No.
you've seen it, yeah?
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's got this super synthy do 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 do. It's got that thing.
Yeah, I think I was just taking it all in. I'll have to watch it again.
Yeah, the soundtrack's amazing.
Interesting.
Have you guys ever seen The Guest with Dan Stevens?
Yeah,
Never
what
heard
did you
it.
think of that?
I didn't love it. I thought it was.
Yeah, I
thought
didn't love it.
I thought it was really cool up until the finale of the film, because
Yeah.
the whole movie it sets it up as it's more of like an action thriller, and then the last third of the film is a slasher horror movie,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
that could potentially be cool, but
Yeah.
it's so jarring that when that kind of stuff happens, it goes from kind of being competent in its presentation to being very campy and silly.
Yeah.
I was very conflicted because it kind of becomes a different thing in the final third of it.
Yeah,
But-
it becomes not what you were. Yeah, I don't know. I was going to say not what you were expecting, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but in some cases, definitely.
Yeah, in that case, I would say it's not the best. I'm sure there are other films like Cabin in the Woods surprised me how much I enjoyed that movie.
Oh yeah,
I expected
Cabin
it to
in the
just
Woods
be
is great.
Yeah, I expected it just to be a silly horror movie, but then the Scooby Doo riffs that they do, with the cast, kind of being parallels to the Scooby Doo gang,
Yeah,
and then the gags that they have to make you think that there's about to be a big horror element, and then there's not.
yeah,
I think it's a really well made movie, and it really surprised me how good it was. But on the other hand, with The Guest, it's cool if you're gonna subvert my expectations in terms of what I'm about to watch, but make the subversion better than what you originally presented. If you're gonna go from
Yeah.
a slasher movie, or if you're gonna go from an action movie to a slasher movie, make the slasher part the better aspect of the film.
yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah.
Predator, prime example. Predator is an action movie for sure, but it goes from being like a silly like war adventure to then being like, oh, we're being hunted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Predator's great. I
Yeah.
haven't seen that in way too long. That's interesting because I was gonna say one that disappointed me was Prometheus. I really thought that was gonna be great,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
and boy, I was really shocked at how awful it was.
Yeah, it is not good, is it?
No, and it's not one of those that you're gonna, for me, that I'm gonna go back and rewatch and go, oh well, I guess it wasn't as bad. Like there's just so much stuff in it that didn't make any sense. That where like when he took his
Yeah.
helmet off and all that stuff, where I was like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it was so, it's like everything that was great about the original Alien, they just reversed. It was too pretty, everybody was too handsome, and it just was a really, really bad remake of Alien by people who should have known better.
Yeah.
That was really
Can't say I
disappointing.
love that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say one for me that kind of surprised me. Maybe not necessarily like a horror movie, more of maybe a thriller. I'm not sure. Was The Invitation with Logan Marshall Green, also in
I just
Prometheus,
watched that.
actually.
I just watched that one actually, Nate.
Yeah, it's like from the director of like Jennifer's Body, which is not a terrible film, but it's a movie that exists. So I wasn't expecting like a lot from it. I was just turning it on one night, and yeah, I was drawn in. And you kind of know from the beginning like what's going to happen, and then when it does, you're just like, no, oh my god.
Yeah, Nate, I actually, about that movie, I really appreciated that. For anybody watching, there's a creepy cult element to the plot, and you're not sure whether or not the main character is dealing with grief or
Right.
if the creepy elements are actually occurring. And up through the whole movie, I was really engaged, thinking like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what this is. Like I don't know what's going to happen. And to that same point, like the fact that it made me engaged on like a premise that was very like contained and wasn't high stakes and was more of like an emotional character piece was really cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that movie like a lot, because it is so like self-contained. They're just in a house for the whole movie. Not a particularly long movie, but it does take you on a little ride, and it's very character based. Yeah, really, really well done movie. Well acted, well written, well paced. I thought, yeah, really enjoyed that. Don't know if it's a straight up horror. It's kind of like a psychological thriller that turns into like a slasher kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really love that movie.
Yeah, I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. I wasn't necessarily keen on the ending. And of course, if you're listening right now, I won't spoil anything, but the the ending, I would have preferred a little more ambiguity, but I think the way that they handled things was really well done. Like I really enjoyed watching it.
Yeah. I don't hate it. I think they could have left it alone and it would have still worked though.
Definitely.
From like the very ending. They added like a little touch at the end, and again, I didn't hate it. It was kind of like but at the same time, I was kind of like, really?
Well, I know I brought it up to you guys, and I don't know if it's been in the podcast yet, but I recently watched Autopsy of Jane Doe on Netflix. And
was that good?
It's really good up until the last 15 minutes.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
man.
it's kind of what we're touching upon with like endings with horror films, because the movie starts off and it's about a father and son who are both morticians, and the police bring them a body that they found at a murder scene, and they're like, we don't know who this is. Like, we just found them on the crime scene. Like, can you guys handle this? And it's like a Friday night, and the son ditches his girlfriend to go to the movies, or ditches his girlfriend to go to the movies, and rather instead of doing that, stays and helps his father with this like surprise case they have to handle.
Hmm.
And they start investigating this body, and as they're doing their job, they start finding weird elements to the body, like things under the skin and like rope under the tongue and really odd elements like that. And
Ooh.
it becomes a spooky like horror situation really quickly after like
Hmm.
well not really quickly but after a while after you're like familiar with like who the characters are and you're getting this kind of like father and son drama about like wasting your life away at your job. And
Mm.
then in the last like 15 minutes, even though it's very clear to the audience, they kind of spoil, well, not really spoil, like you know what the monster is. Like it's very laid out, but, and this isn't what it is, but the son character in the last 15 minutes stops and essentially looks at the camera and goes, Dad, I figured it out. And the dad's like, What is it, son? And he's like, It's a vampire. And for these reasons, it must be a vampire. It's not a vampire. Not to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. But it like totally pulled me out because it was definitely one of those moments where like in the initial script, there's no way that they had that written in. Like that was definitely the
Right.
studio going, I don't know what
Really?
happened. Yeah, being like, I don't
Oh,
get this
The
movie.
studio was like, this doesn't make any sense. You need to explain it to the audience.
Exactly, yeah. And it was so heartbreaking
Wow.
because like up to that point, it's a
That's
really sad movie with a really great point about like um, wasting your life away at your job and like living your life a little bit outside of it. Like you have to work, of course, because of our society, but like spend time with the people you
Right.
love and like do fun things, like live while you're young. And then the ending is
Yeah.
just so stupid. It lost me. It was such a disappointing horror movie ending.
That's interesting.
Damn.
Well, like I said, like it's like you be as clever as you want, but if it's not scary, it doesn't work. You know,
Yeah.
you kind of have to have that thing going on. Like Cabin in the Woods is one of those rare movies that it's both scary, but then I had no idea that movie was going to go in the direction it did, and it was
Right.
so interesting that it went there. I was like, wait, what? You know, but then I was like, oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So that's maybe an exception to that, but I don't consider a Cabin in the Woods a straight up horror movie in that sense.
Yeah,
It's
it's fairly
too
satirical.
self-aware, maybe. Yeah, it's good. It's not a criticism at all.
Yeah, definitely. I think a horror comedy.
Yeah.
And horror and horror comedy are kind of a weird thing where it's not really a comedy and it's not really a horror, but it's also absolutely a horror and absolutely a comedy. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead or
Oh yeah, I love Shaun of the
Right.
Dead.
a sillier version like
Dead-
Tucker
Dead
and Dale
Alive.
versus Evil.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's one of the things I love about American Werewolf in London is that
Yeah.
it's I feel like it's unique in the sense that it's a comedy horror film, but the comedy and the horror don't mix. It's never, to me, it's never scary and funny at the same time. I mean, maybe a little bit, but generally speaking, it's one of the reasons it's so jarring is because it lulls you in with this like comfortable humor and everything, and then all of a sudden it's just like batshit crazy.
Wait,
And
what's
you
that
feel
again?
I said, and then all of a sudden it's just batshit crazy. You're like running for your life. And
Oh no, I mean what film? I zoned
American
out for a
Werewolf
second.
in London.
Oh yeah.
It's not the same sort of like Evil Dead funny horror.
Right.
It's not goofy. Like the horror in it is really scary, and I almost feel like the horror is so scary in that movie that they need the comedy to offset it a little bit, just to make it palatable.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I watched one recently on Netflix that didn't really work for me called oh shoot, it's about these kids that go to like a metal show in the 80s and there's like
Hmm.
these satanic cult murders going on at the same Oh, it's
Oh, Green Room?
no, Green Room's great.
Yeah, Green Room is
Um,
good.
Green Room's great. It's called We Summon the Darkness, is what it's called. And it kind of, I watched the trailer before I watched it, and I could tell it was going to be kind of silly. And I wanted just kind of like a good time. And it is a good, fun movie, but it's just not like, I think, clever enough in a lot of ways. Maybe, I don't know. The movie just didn't work in some ways. It's a fun watch. It's like these kids go to like a metal show and there's like in the background of the movie the whole time there's like this narrative of like there's these satanic cult murders happening across the country and there's like a preacher that jumps up on TV. He's like a televangelist and he's like, yeah, metal music is ruining the youth and they're like worshiping Satan and stuff. And like the televangelist preacher guy is played by Johnny Knoxville.
Oh wow.
And so like it's going to be goofy, and it's a fun watch, but didn't really work so much for me as a comedy, and it didn't work as a horror, and so I think it kind of missed the mark. I think you can land on one or both of those, and it'll work, even if you don't hit both. But it kind of missed on both for me as like a slasher movie and a comedy.
Right.
Whereas like Green Room, not a horror comedy. Green Room is an excellent little self-contained, ultra-violent. Fuck, Green Room's really good. If you haven't seen Green Room's really good.
Yeah, Green Room is great.
What I like about that movie is when, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Green Room, when the band first finds itself like kind of locked in the green room at the bar, and they're kind of like almost negotiating their way out of it with like the bad guys, with like the skinhead bad guys, and they're like, all right, well, we've got a guy in here, we're gonna take his gun, and like then we'll come out. And they're like, okay, well, hey, so and so, give him your gun. And the guy's like, really? And it's such a tense moment of this like negotiation, whereas like in another movie it would just be like brute force the entire way, I think.
Yeah,
Man, that's a good movie. It's just so so tense. It's so tense the whole time. And I feel like the characters in that movie do like real problem solving on like how to get out of the situation that they're in.
Yeah, that's great about it, I think.
Okay, well, we can't just run out because they'll just kill us. And so we need to stay here, and we've got to keep this guy as like kind of a hostage. And like the good guys are like keeping hostages, and the bad guys are outside kind of waiting to see what they'll do. Man, that's a good movie.
It's really good. I also really like that when people do die in it, like, spoiler alert, there's like a big thing of like the Nazis have like dogs, and people just like die, like they just fucking die. It doesn't make a big thing about like stopping the scene. You'll just be like, oh shit, that guy's dead. He just died.
When they finally make a move, they'll finally like make a move to get out, and people will just die. And you're like, fuck, that's not what happened. People would just
Yeah, that's interesting that's so unusual.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
You know, because it sounds so obvious once you say it, and yet,
And the characters really know that they can't like stop and mourn their friends. There's not a scene where they can be like, "Oh no, so and so died."
Yeah,
because they're just like, "Oh,
screaming,
grab the gun that he got from the guy, and we'll go."
Yeah.
They make
man, the bit with the hand in that, the bit with his wrist through the door.
Oh yeah.
Fucking awful.
Yeah, that's a good one. Not a straightforward like horror flick, but not a straightforward slasher, but it works as like a ultra violent kind of thriller.
Yeah, definitely.
And excellently acted. I mean, Patrick Stewart's in it. Anton Yelchin is in it.
Yeah.
Man, great cast. and just such a specific premise too. Like a punk band goes and plays at like a skinhead bar,
Yeah.
and they're
And it
like,
all goes wrong.
oh shit, this is a skinhead bar. And then they get up on stage and they're just like, fuck you, Nazis. And it all goes south from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love movies like that are almost like the like the indie horror stuff. It still have some recognizable stars, but it kind of goes back to like there for a while horror. Like I think Mike and Johnny, like when we were growing up, like horror was pretty big. Horror was pretty like blockbuster stuff. Like when I was a kid, and it's nice to see sort of the return to like it's weird because now it's pretty rare, I think, for like a big blockbuster horror. I think going back to like the new It movie, that's the first movie in a while that I've seen. And there have been several since then where I was like, this is like a big budget horror movie. Like they spent money on this movie.
Yeah.
Because like when I was a teenager and going into college, it was all found footage. And like, yeah, those movies were popular, but they didn't spend any money on those movies at all. So many of them were bad. And so it's nice to see kind of like the low budget indie movies that are actually like artist driven, that maybe don't have the biggest audience. And because I didn't see Green Room until it was like on Netflix. This is like a year ago or something. And it had been out for probably 5 years. It's kind of not a new movie anymore. Same thing with like all the A24 movies. None of them are like particularly big when they come out, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong in saying that. If you're not a horror fan, I should say. Horror fans will know when they come out.
Well, I think that was the case, but I don't know if that's
now.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true anymore though about like A24 movies because like after Get Out, I think that the mainstream media has kind of taken to these art house horror films more. Clearly with like Hereditary, Midsummer, Get Out, like what was Jordan Peele's follow up? Us. Yeah.
Us, yeah.
I feel like
I was gonna say when Midsummer came out, that was a movie that the girl I was dating then I was like, we have to go see Midsummer like in theaters. Like because we had watched Hereditary together, and I was like, oh, holy shit, this is a movie. And so Midsummer came out, and I was like, we have to go. It's playing downtown right now. We have to go see it like immediately, And it had been a while for me since there was like a horror movie that came out where I was like, I gotta see that, because horror was, when I was a teenager going into college, into young adulthood and everything, horror was kind of a garbage genre. It could be, at least.
Yeah.
Because it was all the found footage stuff, and I just didn't really care for it.
Yeah, definitely. Growing up, it was
not that I need the spectacle. I don't need the spectacle. And oftentimes I'm not drawn to spectacle, but found footage just became like such a thing that it was kind of a turnoff for me. Like if I even just like saw even a movie that maybe I would watch later and saw that it worked, I wouldn't go see it in theaters. It'd be when it came out on Hulu or whatever, Netflix.
Yeah.
I wouldn't pay money to see them in theaters for the longest time, and now I definitely will, because there's definitely some good stuff coming out. Like I said, Invisible Man earlier this year was fantastic. It's like a good like sci-fi horror.
Yeah, I liked Invisible Man. How do you guys? How often do you guys approach trying to draw something scary, and how do you approach it?
Oh, it's hard.
It's really tough. Like to draw something.
Because you have to draw it, You have to show you have to show the thing that's scary.
Yeah, and like it's easy enough to draw something that's creepy. And I have a lot of people, like, when I'm trying to work on horror, be like, oh yeah, that's really creepy. But I'm like, yeah, but that's kind of easy. But to draw something that's scary is like near fucking impossible. I'm not sure if you can do it, really.
Yeah,
I don't know.
horror comics scare the shit out of me. And I'm actually working on like the baby steps getting into like a horror western right now. It's like a monster western that I'm really excited about with a writer named Chase Hahn. And I'm excited about the script, but I'm also like really, really scared to get into it because like there's a whole like layout issue that comes from horror comics where like you can't, you almost have to like be able to like lay it out where you turn the page and then there's the thing, whereas
Yeah.
you can't have the scary thing in like the bottom panel because
Because you just look at it right away. Yeah.
because me as a reader, I kind of scan a page and then start reading, and it might just be because I'm an artist, but I'm sure a lot of casual readers do that as well. You have to like be a little bit more mindful about what you're showing on a page and where you want to show certain things. So yeah, horror comics and drawing something scary, period, even if it's just a drawing like we're doing right now, is really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
To just show something scary.
Yeah.
I really like like it can be done. There's the oh shoot, what's it called? The Goya painting of the guy, the Titan.
Oh, eating the guy,
like
yeah,
eating his son. Yeah. Oh my god, that's
terrifying.
fucking scary. And it's just a painting of the thing happening. It's just the guy eating his son, and you're like, that's just it. It shouldn't be scary because I'm just looking at it. But oh my god, is it scary?
Well, you know what I think?
Yeah, it's horrible.
It kind of touches upon what we talked about earlier with the Uncanny Valley. And I think it's particular to that painting that you just brought up. Because, as you pointed out, if you were to draw a horror comic and you just put the monster on the bottom panel of the page, the viewer is going to, one, go to it because it's probably the biggest panel on the page. But also, It kind of loses the scary factor if it's just plain out in the open. Like, oh no, it's a cool drawing. But with that painting of Kronos, it's eerie because you see what's happening and it's gory, but that's not what's scary about it. What's unsettling is how non-human it looks, but yet it clearly is a human form.
Yeah.
That's what's terrifying about that image. Like the eyes are buggy, the mouth is really gaping. Yeah, it's traumatizing not because of the act that he's consuming someone. It's the way that it's physically illustrated. And so I think that's what's crucial with artistic horror. Like Geiger, for example. Like his work can be unsettling as well. Because it's so close to being normal that it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's something with that Goya painting. Like I think that, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but that wasn't a painting that was like in a gallery. He just like had that in his house, and he didn't intend for it to be seen by anyone. I think
that was
I didn't know
that
that.
one.
Wow.
That was one of his black paintings, I think, and I'm pretty sure his black paintings he did on the walls of his shed.
Yeah, it was like yeah. He did them on the walls.
Wow.
And that just adds
that.
like a whole other layer of like, why are you doing this stuff just for yourself?
It was without meaning to turn it too much into a horror story because I've only read a little bit. So as I remember it, it was in the last couple of years of his life, right?
Mhm.
Like it was the last paintings he ever did, and they never gave any explanation for him. He just put those on the walls of his shed and then just fucking left it there.
Yeah, they were just there, and like they were found
Fucking
later.
weird.
Yeah, that's man, that's scary.
I love
but
that.
you read like a horror comic. I'm a big fan of Outcast, and Johnny, I know you are too. I don't really get like scared reading Outcast. Like I love it, and I think it's a great story. But it's I don't actually even, now that I'm thinking about it, know of any comics that I've read that I've been like, whoa, that's really scary.
Yeah, I mean, Outcast I found creepy.
Outcast is creepy.
It goes back to that thing. But I wasn't afraid reading it.
And there's something like really, I think, to me at least, like lovable in Paul, as I said, is like drawings.
Yeah.
There's like a really likable quality to his characters. And he draws like really spooky characters really well. And they are spooky and creepy. but it's not scary.
That's another issue I think I have is when it's an artist whose work I really like I can't find it scary because I'm just looking at it like every page. I'm like, fuck, that's so well drawn. Like I'm not really looking at it like that's really
You
scary.
spend
'cause I'm just
so much
firing
time
it.
looking at it that it's not scary anymore. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an issue. That's a
Are
hazard.
you guys familiar with Al Columbia? I think
No.
we've talked about him before, but if you, to me, he's the guy that is scary as fuck as far as art goes. There's a book that he did. There's the cover.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know if that's him, but
Ooh.
yeah, he's interesting because he does a like kind of a cartoony style, and it looks like an old cartoon until the more you look at it, the more you realize super fucked up stuff's going on in it.
Ooh.
Let's see. I mean, it gets pretty insane. You guys see some of that?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's yeah. Oh, here's a great one. I like that guy right there.
Mm.
Al
Yeah,
Columbia really scares me.
it's been hard. Like I'm designing monsters right now for that book that I told you guys about. And a really cool note that I got back from the writer is it's not going to be like creepy. It's going to be kind of like a blockbuster horror, like it's a monster
Creature
story.
flick.
Yeah, so like there's going to be cool monsters in it, and it's going to be kind of like Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
But still, like the monster's going to like thrash through the townspeople and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But a cool note that I got back from the writer was like there's a main monster, and he was like the main character is going to fight this monster throughout the duration of the story, and we're kind of talking about the intro to the story right now. And he said it would be great if this monster wasn't sort of like the xenomorphs from Alien. If
Wasn't?
it had life to it. He said if it could emote and be a character, that would be great.
That's
And I was like,
interesting.
oh my
cool.
God, because I was thinking
True.
about it like
Yeah.
like Alien.
Yeah.
I was like, it just needs to be terrifying. It needs to be this thing that comes out of like the cave and like kills everyone, and it's just this fucking monster. And he said
Yeah.
it needs to be a character. And I was like, oh my God, I have to give this thing a face. Like it needs to be able to project emotion.
Well, how come? Like, what's the reasoning for that? I mean,
well,
does it-
because of his script, it really does.
because
And
of the stuff it does.
he says it needs to be an animal more than it does a monster. And I was like,
Okay.
oh, okay, I get it now. I get it. It's a monster. It's perceived as a monster,
Yeah.
but really, it's an animal. It's a cave animal,
Mm.
and it needs to be terrifying, but you need to have some empathy for it, maybe. And so that
Right.
really changed my whole design process for it.
Huh.
And that really kind of like changed my perspective on the whole project of it being this kind of like just really fun action horror monster story to like, oh, we're actually like not that he's not a good writer, because he's an excellent writer.
Sure.
I should have given him more credit from the beginning, but I was like, oh, we're really telling a story here about these two beings, like this the main character is this woman and this monster, and they're completely different, but
Mhm.
they do have this relationship, and it can't just be one-sided. It can't be the woman going, I hate you because you're this monster that wrecked my life. It needs to be two-sided. There needs to be a side of the monster, and I'm trying now to really tell that story like through some of its like, because before it is a cave monster, and so I took the eyes away with a lot of the designs. I was like, it doesn't need eyes. It lives in
Right.
pitch black.
Yeah.
Mm. Oh,
And he was
okay.
like, it has to have a face. And so I was like, okay, it has to have eyes.
Yeah.
And so the eyes have become a big, big part of the design for me. And that's been a real challenge because I had this one idea going forward kind of from the get-go through our first few rounds of revisions on the main monster. And he said, if this was like a one-off monster, you nailed it. I have no notes. He said, but this has to be like the monster. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. I get it. And that's me and him, I think, having like a good working relationship where he liked what I did and he pretty much was like, make it emote somehow.
Yeah.
And so I started looking at
sounds
different animals that can emote, and I want it to really. He sent me some samples. He was like, just stuff like this, and one of them I thought was really funny, and I don't want to get too much into it. But was have you guys seen the I can't remember his name right now, but the YouTube videos of the little CG spider?
Oh yeah.
CG tarantula.
Nathan?
Yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah, I don't remember.
What is it? Sounds great.
They're these cute little videos of this tarantula who's like very friendly and kid friendly. I think his name's Nathan. I could be wrong.
Something like that.
But it's animated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he sent me that, and I was like, oh. He was like, don't make it cute, but he's like, do you see? I was like, yeah, I think I know what you're going for. There's a lot of personality in this like little furry monster.
Wow. Interesting. That's an interesting way to get the point across to you that he's trying to make.
Yeah. And that's what I like about Freddy Krueger here is because like I touched on before, like of the slasher villains, he's the only one with like a personality. He's got a face and he doesn't wear a mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not a huge Nightmare on Elm Street fan, but I do appreciate that he is a real character. He's not just this thing that you project your fears onto. He's a very specific thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And like in this drawing, like this could almost like even work in continuity. Like a girl could be having a dream about this like gothic romantic story, like it's Rebecca or something, and like gothic Freddy Krueger shows up to ruin it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gothic Freddy Krueger, I like that.
It's a little bit weird that we don't get more period piece horrors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes they just don't work. Like, I don't know how you guys feel about like the Woman in Black or the Lady in Black, whatever that Daniel Radcliffe movie was.
Oh, I never saw it.
You know, it just
Yeah.
Yeah. But then there's something like The Witch that's, I mean, just a period piece, which one, you don't see that period that often, that like colonial time. And two, it just works. Like it's, and that movie just has such a strong identity. I don't know the entire story of the production of that movie, but it just doesn't seem like Robert Eggers like conceded on anything as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't look like it, at least, like he would have conceded anything to the producers or studio.
Yeah.
Because it is such a specific movie.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any periods that you think would be ripe for a horror movie? Civil War would be kind of cool. I've never heard or seen a Civil War era horror story.
It's weird that you say that. I was actually just thinking Civil War.
Yeah. Civil War would be cool.
It depends on what you mean. You mean like set during the Civil War, so at a Civil War setting, or just in the, like, what was that, 1865 or something?
Yeah,
that's when it ended. Yeah.
Okay. Because I could definitely see a Southern Gothic horror story, but set during the Civil War. That would be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, well, I think it would be like with what you're saying. It could be cool to have like a horror film that somewhat takes place on like a plantation, and you could have the theme of the film be about recognizing human life and learning to respect one another.
Sure.
And having like you could have two opposing people. You could have a slave and a slave owner have to survive some kind of horror theme. Johnny, so you're saying you're pretty far done. We can check yours out right now. I see lots of green.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of green. I don't know whether I'm going to keep it green or whether I'm going to switch it up later. But I'm actually having a bit of trouble coloring this one because there's a lot going on, and I don't want to
Really?
overcomplicate the colors and keep the focus on her.
Hmm.
I'm pretty happy. I drew a wallpaper that I'm kind of
Yeah,
plastered
man.
over the back that I like.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of. Hang on, let me go back. Get rid of the colors for now.
I like the green.
Yeah, I quite like the green. Got to work out how to make it work. But that's the inked, like finished inks.
Wow.
I love it, man.
That's a complicated drawing.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me
it is
too.
a little bit. So it's a tough one to color because it's pretty detailed, and yeah, I'll figure something out with it. I'm sure. But I'm pretty happy with it. It's
Yeah.
creepy. It's
Yeah.
almost what I'm after in terms of scary as well. It
Yeah.
gives me unpleasant vibes, which is kind of what I'm going for.
I'm very excited to hear your thoughts after when you finally see the movie.
I can't wait. Yeah,
I
will
really
be
do
seeing
feel
it
like there's a
imminently.
before you've seen the movie and after you've seen the movie.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I
It's
can't
that
wait.
good. It's that good.
It is. Yeah, it is good.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, man, those inks are fantastic. But because
Thanks,
you
Yeah.
two have the mutual connection on horror, I'll hop over to Todd real quick.
Sure.
Todd, let's check out that Nosferatu. I'm surprised your battery lasted this long.
Well, yeah, I plugged it in, although supposedly you're not supposed to draw and have it plugged in at the same time or something. I'm just paranoid because my last iPad exploded on me. So,
Oh, whoops.
yeah.
I
Well,
do that all the time.
I was doing something wrong. But anyways, so I've got a bunch of different versions of this, but there's one that's more basic. I've got the haunted house in the foreground and kind of the fire. And then I also did a black and white version. Like I said, I almost forgot his teeth. That would have been interesting.
Which
And
is
then
kind
I've
of
got-
surprising
this
for a
is probably-
vampire.
Yeah, well, and his teeth in particular are like practically on the outside of his mouth. You know, like he can't really close his mouth. Like those front teeth just come right out, so, no matter pretty much what he does. But I knew I'd put it in the pencils, and then as I was drawing, I was like, "There's something here I'm forgetting. What am I forgetting?" And then I was like, "Oh, his teeth." And yeah. But it's a lot of what I do is I do different images and then I try different combinations of filters, and that's where some strange, interesting things happen. And I'll turn something upside down. Like we've got this haunted house image that I used. I've got one haunted house image in the background and another in the foreground, but the one in the foreground I flipped upside down. I don't know if it works, but you can just there's lots of opportunities to play with things.
Yeah, those are
For
awesome,
instance,
Todd.
I can invert the moon. Now it's blue. I can't decide how colorful or not colorful to make it. I both like that and don't like it at the same time. But it's really fun. I'm glad I went with what I went with. This was
Yeah, me
a
too.
blast. Yeah. I think we all had some great choices and played up to our strengths. But I'd forgotten when I was a kid, my dad did something really cool, which was I'm old enough that but this is before we had VCRs, and so like you watch something on TV and then that was it, like it was over, and you couldn't go back and rewatch it necessarily. And I remember when Salem's Lot came out, I watched maybe like 10 minutes of it, but it was A, past my bedtime, and B, my parents were like, "There's no way we're gonna let you watch this. It's way too scary." But what I got in the habit of was watching a little bit of the start of a movie just to get the feel for it, and then I would get up I would make my dad promise to watch it, and I would get up in the morning when he was having breakfast on his way to work, and I would have him tell me what happened. And so I remember I didn't see Salem's Lot. He explained Salem's Lot to me, and is funny, but like I think part of the creative process is you have to sit and imagine stuff. And so for me, like sitting and imagining these movies before I actually saw them was good brain fodder. But I remember, I think Salem's Lot was the first truly scary movie that I became aware of, even though it was a TV movie. It was pretty notorious for its time, as being scarier than other things that had been on television before. And the monster or the vampire in it was really something. This was not Bela Lugosi. I'd not seen a movie monster like that before. And this came out before Alien. So, things really changed with Alien. But before Alien, movie monsters were still pretty human in a lot of ways. And this was a precursor probably to that. It was pretty shocking at its time.
Yeah, man, I can imagine. It's a very scary image. Your Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was fun to play that up too, and just like, man, I can't believe I was actually thinking about this. I can't imagine how scary the original Nosferatu must have been when it came out in the 20s or whatever. My God, that movie's scary now.
Yeah, the imagery from that movie is terrifying. I had
good Lord.
I may have mentioned this actually on a previous episode. I had the fun opportunity to see the movie when I was in college. In Lubbock, screened like at one of the galleries. They have a little theater there, and they screened it, and they had like a live orchestra play the music along with the movie.
Right.
And it's the first time I'd seen the movie, and I was like, wow. Oh my God.
Great way to do it.
And I had seen like stills from the movie, of course, but seeing it like in that setting, it was like this whole like immersive sort of like experience of like watching the orchestra kind of like ferociously try and keep up with the movie.
Right.
It was excellent experience, and now I have a real appreciation for that movie, probably based on that experience. Now that's one of my favorite classic like horror films, and it's just one of the great like monster looks I think of all time. Max Schreck is as Count Orlok is, I mean, just terrifying.
So terrifying.
That's interesting you say that. I just brought up your piece on the main screen, but I definitely get those Nosferatu vibes in the way that you've illustrated Freddy Krueger's eyes and his silhouette in particular, and even the background, the staircase in the building, the doorway right there, or if that's a window, I can't quite tell.
It's like the entryway to, I don't remember if they ever say her exact address, but like Nancy's like address there on Elm Street, I wanted to portray as like a gothic, because it's like a very suburban 80s neighborhood. Yeah. And so for this one, just with the doorway, I wanted to like say like, no, it's like a gothic manor or something. But yeah, that's something I really wanted to do with this piece, was like play up, like you said, with his eyes, like the real drama that maybe you had to portray as like a silent film actor. If Lon Chaney had played Freddy Krueger, because it's probably who it would have been. Yeah. What would that have been like?
Yeah.
And hopefully something like this. Hopefully I haven't missed the mark.
No, man, I think you absolutely nailed it. I think it's fantastic. And I'm excited for you to do your coloring over top of it, because I really think it's ripe for that classic painting illustration style from the 30s and onward.
Unlike other episodes, I'm actually going to do it this time. I've threatened to do it several times, but this time I'm actually going to do it. That's kind of I was going to add a lot more black to this piece, but kind of in the second part, I was kind of like playing to the goal of like, no, I am going to paint over this at least digitally, and see what happens. So I wanted to leave it kind of blank. So we'll see.
I think it's worth it, man. I think it came out really strong. Like, you use the black and white
Yeah.
negative space. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it
you.
looks
Yeah.
great.
Thank
It's
you.
psychological.
How'd yours come out on the show, Mike?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I was about to transition us over. But here we have my thing piece. I'm pretty pleased with how it's turning out so far. Definitely a lot of work I still need to do with the background. I got most of the figures / monster work done, but here's MacReady. I have a little bit of hot breath coming out of him, hitting the cold air. I ended up blacking out the whole background right now with the smoke coming out of the laboratory. Yeah,
Love
Sorry
a
to
hot
laugh.
breath.
yeah.
I'm sorry to laugh. I just want to make a Russell Crowe joke.
I was about to do that, Todd. I was going to go, yeah. I really tried not to reference Russell Crowe too much.
You draw a
Russell
really good
Crowe,
Jack
the
Russell.
star of the thing.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Jack
but-
Russell.
With my piece, you can spin it around, and I'll show you guys the monster so far.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Oh,
actually
man,
having a lot of
yeah.
fun illustrating this. I think, personally, I'm not inclined too much to horror as opposed to other genres and storytelling elements, but I think my art kind of leans that way a little bit. Like the scratchiness, the movement of the brush, I think kind of has a weird feeling to it, which I think parlays itself into horror quite well. So
Sure.
I'm
Definitely.
pretty confident in the way the monster's turning out, and I'm pretty happy with this piece as it stands.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's got a real like raw feel. All of your art with the way you use pen has like a very raw, kind of like a in the moment sort of a feel to it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And I know you do like loose pencils too, so I'm sure that's intentional to kind of leave a lot of it up to the inks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the inks are really where the drawing comes through.
Yeah.
But the structure
Yeah,
is
me too.
important as well, definitely. But yeah, as much as I can leave to like detailing in the moment, as opposed to having it meticulously planned out, the better. At least for me, in terms of my enjoyment of drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
Finding the little things you enjoy, whether it's a cozy picnic or watching people get decapitated and maimed in a horror film.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Well, hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in to Ink Drink Think, Episode 8, Part 2, this Halloween horror special. If you're interested, please check out the links in the description below. Please be sure to follow all of that. And of course, guys, stay tuned to this feed. We have more episodes coming in the near future. And as always, I have been your host, Michael Pickard, joined by my wonderfully talented co-hosts and dear friends, Johnny Wise, Nate Wells, and Todd Blackwood. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next episode.
Awesome.